Far beyond the edge of human space, silence ruled the stars. Darkness stretched like an endless ocean, broken only by the glow of distant suns. Out there, in the cold void where few human ships had ever gone, something was moving. It was not human and it was not friendly. The first signals came as whispers. Strange readings appeared on scanners. A flicker of energy here, a broken transmission there. At first, scientists thought it was only space dust or a glitch, but soon the pattern grew clear. Something large was approaching. Something alive. The United Colonies listened in silence. Across Earth and its many colonies, tension spread like fire. The fleet was not answering hails. It moved without sound, without introduction, like a shadow that refused to speak its name. The leaders of humanity argued in great halls. Some said it was only an exploration fleet. Others feared the truth. The oldest records told of alien empires that rose and fell in blood, and now across the dark sea of stars, one of them was coming toward mankind. The first human ship sent to investigate was the Vigilant. It was not a warship, only a survey vessel, but it was fast and proud. Its crew joked nervously as they left dock, pretending bravery they did not feel. Families waved goodbye, not knowing it would be the last time they saw their loved ones. The Vigilant slipped into the dark, engines burning bright until it vanished from every radar. Hours passed, then days. No call for help. No distress signal. Only silence. When the colonies received no answer, fear turned into panic. A second ship, the Courageous, was dispatched. This time it carried weapons. Soldiers stood ready at their stations. The captain gave short orders, his voice tight but steady. As the Courageous neared the place where the Vigilant had disappeared, the crew stared at the screens. Nothing but stars. Nothing but cold space. Then at once the alarm screamed. A shadow larger than mountains slid across the sensors. Hulls of black metal, silent and endless, filled the void. The alien fleet had arrived. For 1 second there was hope. Perhaps they would talk. Perhaps they would explain. But no words came. No messages. The alien ships moved like hunters circling prey. Then without warning, the stars lit with fire. Energy beams struck the Courageous, tearing through its shields like paper. Metal screamed and bodies flew as explosions rocked the decks. The crew fought back. Guns blazed, missiles launched, but it was like throwing stones at a storm. Within minutes, the ship was nothing but burning wreckage drifting through the dark. News spread fast. Colonies heard the last desperate cries of the Courageous before the signal was cut forever. Children asked their parents what had happened. Soldiers clenched their fists. Leaders grew pale. Humanity had faced war before, but never like this. These were not raiders or rebels. These were conquerors, silent and merciless, and they were already at the gates. Whispers began to rise among the people. Some said there was no chance. The aliens had destroyed other civilizations long before man had even touched the stars. What chance did humans have now? The colonies had only fleets of steel and men with courage. The enemy had technology beyond imagination. Yet deep inside the fear, something else began to grow. Anger, defiance. Humanity had been underestimated before. Empires had risen and fallen, but humans had always survived. Perhaps they could again, but the truth was heavy. The fleet was vast. More ships than any human had ever seen filled the void, moving in silence, no banners, no faces, only machines of war. They did not send threats. They did not demand surrender. They simply advanced step by step, star by star, toward the heart of human space. Every colony began to prepare. Soldiers were called to arms. Factories burned night and day, building weapons, ships, armor. Ordinary men and women volunteered, some with courage, some with fear, but all with the knowledge that this was not a war of choice. This was survival. In the shadows of space, far from the shining cities of Earth, the alien fleet kept moving, silent, patient, unstoppable. And in every heart across the colonies, one question began to echo. Why are they coming? Why do they destroy without speaking? Do they see us as enemies, or do they see us as nothing at all? The answer remained in the silence. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the moment when humanity would face the truth. The first contact had been made. The first blood had been spilled, and far away across the endless black, the greatest war in human history was about to begin. The message spread like fire across the colonies. The Courageous was gone, its crew silenced in the cold of space. No survivors, no signal, only fragments of broken metal drifting among the stars. At first, many could not believe it. Some said it was only an accident. Some whispered it was a trick. But soon the truth became too loud to ignore. The aliens had come and they had destroyed without warning. Humanity stood on the edge of something it had never faced before. On Earth, the Great Council gathered. Leaders from every colony sat in tall halls filled with tension. Their voices clashed like thunder. Some argued for peace, sending messages again and again into the dark, hoping for a reply. Others demanded war, calling the aliens murderers and invaders. No one knew if words would ever be enough. No one knew if humanity even had the power to resist. Yet one fact stood clear. If nothing was done, the aliens would not stop. They would move from one colony to the next, burning everything in their path until Earth itself was nothing but ash. While leaders debated, the soldiers were already moving. Across hundreds of worlds, alarms rang. Bases opened their gates and young men and women lined up to join the defense. Some had never held a weapon before. Some had fought in small wars between colonies. None of them had ever faced an enemy from beyond the stars. Fear was heavy, but so was determination. Humanity had been divided in the past, torn by borders and politics. Now, for the first time in history, it was united by a single truth: survive or be erased. The greatest fleet in human history began to gather at the border world of Arden 3. From every corner of space, ships arrived. Heavy warships, light frigates, carriers filled with fighters. Supply vessels carried fuel, food, and weapons. The sky above Arden 3 shone with metal as more and more ships joined the defense. On the ground, the planet turned into a fortress. Barricades, bunkers, missile silos, and hidden tunnels spread across deserts and mountains. Civilians who had once farmed the land now carried rifles. Scientists turned their labs into weapon factories. Among the endless numbers, one small group of soldiers stood together. They were not famous, not leaders, only a unit of ordinary fighters. Their names did not matter to history yet, but their hearts burned with the same fire as every man and woman who stood on Arden 3. They trained under the red sky, sweating in the dust, their eyes fixed on the horizon. Each of them knew the truth. The aliens were stronger. The aliens were faster. The aliens had technology beyond anything humans had seen, but no machine, no empire, had the one thing humans carried inside them: the will to fight until nothing was left. At night, the soldiers looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the alien fleet was moving closer. Every day, the distance grew smaller. The silence of space pressed heavy on their chests. None of them said it, but all of them felt it. They might never see Earth again. They might never see their families. But if they stood here, if they held the line, perhaps their sacrifice would give humanity a chance. The days passed with restless energy. Training drills shook the ground. The air filled with the sound of engines, weapons, and marching boots. Messages poured in from the colonies. Children drew pictures of soldiers and sent them to the front lines. Families recorded voices filled with love and fear, sending them across space to their loved ones. The soldiers listened quietly, storing the words in their hearts like armor. Rumors spread among the ranks. Some whispered that the aliens had destroyed entire civilizations before humanity was even born. Some believed the aliens saw humans as nothing more than insects too small to matter. Others thought there was a reason behind the silence, a secret that no one yet understood. No one knew the truth. The only thing certain was that the enemy was coming, and soon. Commanders of the fleet gave speeches. Their words echoed across ships and bases. They spoke of courage, of duty, of survival. They told the soldiers that this was not just a battle for one planet. It was a battle for every human who had ever lived and every child who had not yet been born. If Arden 3 fell, Earth would follow. If Arden 3 stood, humanity would stand a chance. The soldiers felt the weight of history pressing on their shoulders. They were not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for a species. 1,000,000 years of struggle, hope, and survival now rested on their ability to hold the line. They sharpened their blades, checked their rifles, prepared their ships. Fear turned into fire. Fire turned into resolve. Far away, the alien fleet moved closer, silent, endless, unstoppable. They did not send messages. They did not change course. They came with the patience of predators, knowing their prey could not escape. In the quiet before the storm, humanity waited, every heartbeat like a drum of war. On Arden 3, the soldiers stood ready. Above them, the greatest fleet mankind had ever built floated in the void, shields humming, engines burning. The people of Earth watched from afar, knowing that their fate rested in the hands of those who now faced the coming storm. The silence stretched longer, heavier. Then on one dark night beneath the stars, the scanners lit up. A signal, a shadow. The aliens had arrived. The call to arms was over. The war had begun. The night sky above Arden 3 filled with fire. The scanners lit up first, showing the alien fleet moving like shadows across the stars. They came in silence without warning, just as they had before. Hundreds of ships, black and endless, slid through the void. Some were larger than mountains, others small and fast, like hunters waiting to strike. The human fleet stood ready, lined across the orbit of Arden 3, shields raised, weapons armed. For a long moment there was no sound but the steady hum of engines and the soft breaths of soldiers waiting for death. Then the aliens opened fire. The darkness of space exploded with light. Beams of burning energy tore through the sky, faster than human eyes could follow. The first human cruiser was hit before it could even respond. Shields shattered, metal cracked, and the ship broke apart into pieces. Voices cried out over the comms, then silence. The soldiers on the other ships watched as fragments of the cruiser drifted into space, glowing like dying stars. The humans answered with everything they had. Battleships launched missiles, their engines blazing bright trails across the void. Fighters swarmed forward, moving like angry insects, firing railguns and plasma cannons at the alien giants. For a moment the sky looked alive, filled with streaks of light and thunder. Explosions shook the heavens. The war had begun. The aliens did not move in chaos. They moved with precision, every ship flowing in perfect formation. Their weapons cut through the human fleet with frightening ease. One destroyer after another fell, torn apart by beams that no shield could resist. Yet the humans did not break. Even as ships burned, even as comrades screamed over the comms, they kept fighting. They were slower, weaker, but they were human, and humans did not surrender. On the command ship, officers shouted orders. Missiles locked onto alien hulls, striking their armor and leaving burning scars. Some alien ships faltered. Some even broke apart under the endless storm of human fire. The soldiers cheered when the first alien ship exploded, a fireball brighter than a sun. It was proof the enemy could bleed, proof they could fall. The victory was small, but it burned in their hearts like a spark of hope. But the aliens were not done. Their massive flagship pushed forward, dark as stone, silent as death. From its core, it released a storm of smaller ships, fast and sharp, swarming like blades of steel. They sliced through the human fighters, cutting them down by the dozens. Pilots screamed as their ships burned, their last words echoing across the comms before vanishing forever. On the surface of Arden 3, the soldiers watched the battle unfold above the skies. Flashes of light turned the night into day. Every explosion shook the ground, even from orbit. Families huddled in bunkers, children covering their ears, praying the fleet above them would hold. The soldiers gripped their rifles, knowing that if the line broke, the war would fall to them next. Back in space, the fight dragged on. Hours felt like seconds, seconds felt like years. The human fleet was strong, but every victory cost them blood. Every alien ship destroyed meant 3 human ships lost. The commanders knew the truth. If the battle continued this way, humanity would not survive. Yet no one gave the order to retreat. They stood their ground because retreat meant Earth itself would burn. One squadron of human fighters made a desperate charge. Their leader, a young pilot with steady hands, guided them straight into the heart of the alien swarm. Missiles blazed, guns roared, and explosions filled the void. The pilots knew they would not return, but they went anyway. Their sacrifice tore a hole in the enemy line, giving the human battleships a chance to fire their heaviest weapons. For a brief moment, the tide shifted. The alien flagship shook under the impact. Armor cracked, pieces of its hull broke away into the void. A cheer rose from the humans as the giant seemed to falter. But then, as if mocking them, the ship unleashed a blast of energy so powerful it blinded every scanner. Entire squadrons vanished in fire. Cruisers shattered, battleships burned, and silence fell again across the comms as more human voices were lost. On Arden 3, the soldiers looked up at the burning sky. They could see human ships falling, flaming wrecks breaking through the atmosphere before crashing into the deserts and seas. Every explosion in the heavens was another comrade gone. Fear spread like poison, but so did something else. Rage, defiance. The people of Arden 3 clenched their fists. If the skies fell, they would fight on the ground. They would not kneel. As the battle raged, the commanders made a grim decision. They ordered parts of the fleet to fall back toward the planet, forming a shield over Arden 3 itself. The war in orbit was being lost, but the last stand would continue on the surface. Humanity would not give up the world so easily. The first clash was over, but it had cost humanity more than they could have imagined. Dozens of ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost, and yet against the darkness of the alien fleet, the humans were still standing, bloodied, broken, but alive. They had not been erased. Not yet. The aliens pressed forward, their formation unbroken, their silence eternal. And as the wrecks of human ships burned across the skies of Arden 3, the soldiers on the ground lifted their weapons. The first clash had shown them the truth. The enemy was stronger, but the war was not over. It had only just begun. The skies of Arden 3 burned with falling wrecks. Human ships torn apart in the clash above, rained down like fire across deserts, mountains, and seas. Each impact shook the ground, sending clouds of smoke and dust into the air. Civilians hiding in bunkers trembled as the world above them seemed to collapse. Yet when the ground stopped shaking, the people of Arden 3 did not give in to fear. They rose, gathered their weapons, and prepared for the fight that was coming. The human fleet had done all it could. Many ships were gone, and those that survived fell back toward the planet, creating a shield of burning metal above Arden 3. The commanders knew the truth. They could not win in space. The aliens were too many, too strong, too merciless. But there was still a chance to fight on the ground. If Arden 3 fell, Earth would be next, and so the order spread to every soldier, every pilot, every civilian strong enough to hold a weapon. Hold the line. No matter the cost. The surface of Arden 3 transformed overnight. Fields that once grew food now held trenches and barbed wire. Cities were emptied, their streets turned into barricades. Hidden tunnels stretched under the ground, filled with ammunition and supplies. Soldiers lined the walls of bunkers, their eyes sharp and unblinking. Civilians carried crates, patched armor, and worked side by side with the army. For once, there were no divisions between soldier and farmer, between worker and leader. They were all one now. They were all humanity. In the desert wastes beyond the main city, a small group of soldiers waited in silence. Their uniforms were scarred, their weapons scratched, but their spirits burned brighter than ever. They had seen the fleet fall in orbit. They had lost friends, brothers, sisters in the clash. And yet here they stood, ready to fight again. Each of them knew the truth. The enemy would land soon, and when they did, the ground would turn red with blood. Night fell over Arden 3. The stars above were dim, hidden by the smoke of burning wrecks. The soldiers lay in the sand listening. Some whispered memories of home. Others sharpened blades or checked their rifles. Their commander, an older man with eyes like stone, spoke only once. He said they would hold this world because no one else would. He said that humanity had survived fire, ice, plague, and war. They would survive this too. His words were simple, but they struck deep into every heart. Then the silence broke. From the dark sky, alien ships descended. They moved like shadows, sliding through the clouds without sound. Beams of blue light cut through the night, guiding them to the surface. The first landing shook the ground. Massive alien machines, tall as towers, unfolded from the ships. Their weapons glowed with energy, casting eerie light across the desert. Smaller alien soldiers poured out behind them, armored and fast, their movements sharp and alien. For the first time, humanity saw the enemy not as shadows in space, but as creatures of flesh and steel walking upon their soil. The humans opened fire. From bunkers, trenches, and rooftops, guns roared. Missiles streaked across the sky, striking the alien machines and shattering armor. The ground lit with fire as explosions shook the desert. The aliens answered with a storm of energy beams, cutting through walls and burning trenches. The night turned into chaos. Smoke, fire, screams, and thunder filled every corner of Arden 3. The small group of soldiers in the desert fought with everything they had. Their rifles cracked, their blades flashed, and their voices rose in defiance. They saw comrades fall, yet no one retreated. They moved as one, covering each other, holding the line against the endless tide. Each second they survived was a victory. Each alien they killed a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not prey. Deep beneath the city, commanders studied maps and signals. They saw how much was already lost, how much blood was spilling across the land. Yet in the chaos, a message arrived from a hidden vault beneath the surface of Arden 3. Engineers had uncovered something old, something forgotten. Buried deep since the early days of space travel, when humanity feared it might never survive, there was a weapon so powerful that even the scientists who built it swore it should never be used. The news spread quickly through the ranks. Some called it a miracle, others a curse. The weapon might save Arden 3, but it came with a cost so high that no one wanted to speak it aloud. Still, In the face of extinction, even cursed weapons became hope. The battle raged through the night. Human forces were pushed back, street by street, trench by trench. But with every retreat came another ambush, another explosion, another sacrifice that slowed the alien advance. The people of Arden 3 did not fight for victory. They fought for time. Time for the weapon to be prepared. Time for humanity to find one more chance. As dawn rose over the shattered horizon, smoke covered the skies. Buildings stood broken and the desert was filled with wreckage and bodies. The aliens pushed forward with endless patience, their machines marching without pause. Yet the humans still stood. Their numbers were fewer, their strength nearly broken, but their spirits had not died. Every survivor knew the truth. This was no longer just a battle for a planet. This was the last stand for humanity itself. And as the sun climbed higher, the commanders gave the order. The weapon must be awakened. The last stand of Arden 3 was about to begin. The battle for Arden 3 did not end with dawn. The sun rose on fields of smoke and fire, but the fighting never stopped. Alien machines marched without rest, their weapons burning through human defenses. Streets cracked under their weight, bunkers exploded in fire, and every hour more lives were lost. Yet through the chaos, through the endless screams and thunder, the humans fought on. Each step back was answered with defiance. Each loss was answered with fury. The people of Arden 3 were broken, bloodied, but not defeated. Deep beneath the city, in an ancient vault untouched for centuries, the weapon was being prepared. The engineers worked with trembling hands. The device was enormous, built in the early days when humanity feared it might one day face destruction from the stars. It was not meant to be used lightly. Its power was unlike anything the colonies had ever seen. But now, with alien armies closing in, there was no other choice. The commanders studied the reports in silence. The weapon could unleash a blast strong enough to shatter the alien fleet above and cripple their forces on the ground. But there was a cost. It could not be activated from afar. The systems required someone to stay behind and trigger the final sequence manually. Whoever stayed would not escape. They would die in the fire they unleashed. When the truth spread through the ranks, silence followed. No one wanted to speak, yet all of them understood. If the weapon was not used, Arden 3 would fall and Earth would follow. If it was used, humanity might survive. But someone would have to give everything to make it happen. In the desert, the small group of soldiers who had survived every battle gathered once more. Their commander explained the choice. The room fell quiet. Some lowered their heads, others clenched their fists, but not one of them stepped back. Each of them was willing to make the sacrifice. Each of them wanted to carry the burden for the others. The commander looked into their faces, scarred by dust, blood, and fire, and felt the weight of their courage. Finally, he chose. It would be one of them, but the name was left unspoken until the moment came. Above the planet, the battle still raged. The human fleet, torn and broken, circled what remained of Arden 3's defenses. They fought with dying engines, with failing shields, with guns that overheated from endless fire. Alien ships pressed closer, their black hulls filling the skies. The flagship still loomed, its shadow swallowing stars. Humanity had no strength left. All they had now was the weapon and the courage to use it. The soldiers carried the device piece by piece to its final chamber, deep beneath the city. The corridors shook as alien machines drew closer. Dust rained from the ceilings. Every second felt like the last. When the weapon was finally ready, the commander gave his orders. The others would fight their way out, hold the line, and give cover. One would stay behind to finish the sequence. The soldier who was chosen did not argue. He only nodded, his face calm, though his hands trembled slightly at his sides. He thought of his home, of the family he might never see again, of the children he had promised to return to. And then he thought of Earth, of all the people who could still live if he gave his life here. His fear turned to steel. He was ready. The others left the chamber in silence, giving him one last look, one last nod, before disappearing into the tunnels. Alone in the chamber, the soldier placed his hands on the controls. The machine hummed, lights glowing brighter with every second. Above, the battle grew louder. He could hear the thunder even deep below the ground. He could hear the cries of his comrades fighting their last fight. On the surface, the small unit held the line with everything they had. Bullets and fire filled the streets. Explosions shook the walls. They knew they could not win, but they also knew every second they held gave their comrade below more time. They stood shoulder to shoulder, firing until their rifles overheated, stabbing with blades when the enemy came too close. They did not retreat. They did not falter. They fought until their bodies gave out. The soldier in the chamber closed his eyes as the final sequence reached its end. He thought of the stars one last time, of the future he would never see. Then he pressed the control. The weapon awakened. A light brighter than a sun burst from the heart of Arden 3, rising through the tunnels, through the city, through the skies. The ground shook as if the planet itself roared in defiance. In orbit, the human fleet pulled back as the blast erupted. The alien ships were caught in the storm. Their hulls cracked, their formations broke. Their flagship itself shuddered under the force. One by one, the black giants of the alien fleet exploded, torn apart by a power they had never faced before. On the ground, alien machines collapsed, their bodies melting in the fire. The humans who still stood watched in awe as the enemy fell. For the first time, the invincible had been struck down. The price was terrible, but the result undeniable. Humanity had survived. When the light faded, silence filled the air. Arden 3 was scarred, broken, and bleeding. Thousands had died, and one soldier had given everything. Yet the alien fleet was shattered. The survivors fled into the dark, leaving behind only wreckage. The last stand was not over, but it had turned. Humanity had shown its teeth. They had sacrificed, and in that sacrifice, they had carved a place for themselves among the stars. The fire faded, but its memory stayed in the skies of Arden 3, where once the alien fleet had stretched like an endless shadow. Now there was only wreckage drifting in silence. Fragments of broken ships glowed like dying stars. The black giants that had come to erase humanity were gone, scattered into dust. The battlefield above was quiet at last, though that quiet carried the heavy weight of sacrifice. On the surface, the survivors slowly rose from the ruins. The city was broken, its streets filled with craters and fire. The desert was littered with wrecks, both human and alien. Smoke climbed toward the heavens in long black trails. Soldiers carried the wounded from the rubble. Civilians emerged from bunkers, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. They had expected to die, yet they still stood. Their world was scarred, but it had not been taken. The small unit of soldiers who had fought until the end gathered in silence. Their weapons were gone, their bodies were burned and scarred, but their hearts remained strong. They knew who was missing. They knew who had stayed behind to press the final control. The victory was his as much as theirs. Without his sacrifice, Arden 3 would already be nothing but ash. None of them spoke, for words were too small for what had been lost. They stood together in silence, their eyes turned to the sky, mourning and proud at the same time. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. At first it was whispered in disbelief. Colonies that had feared the aliens would sweep across the stars now learned that humans had stood against them and lived. Messages poured in from distant worlds, carrying words of hope and praise. For the first time, humanity was not only united by fear but by pride. They had proven themselves. They had shown that humans could fight back against the unstoppable. Even the aliens who fled would never forget. The silence of their fleet was broken not by words but by loss. They had faced many species before and crushed them without effort. But here, against humans, they had bled. Their ships had fallen, their armies had burned. They now knew that mankind was not prey to be hunted. Humanity was something else, something dangerous. The commanders of the surviving fleet looked upon the wreckage with weary eyes. They had lost too much. Entire squadrons were gone, thousands of soldiers never to return. Arden 3 itself was wounded, its cities shattered, its deserts filled with graves. And yet the commanders also knew the truth. The cost was terrible, but the sacrifice had changed everything. This was more than a victory. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not kneel. Humanity would not be erased. In the days that followed, Arden 3 became a symbol. Monuments were raised on the broken streets, not for generals or leaders, but for the ordinary men and women who had stood and fought when the sky itself seemed to fall. Songs were sung of the nameless soldier who had stayed behind to activate the weapon. His name was whispered across colonies, carried in silence where words failed. Children spoke of him as a hero, though none had ever seen his face. The survivors rebuilt. Trenches became fields again, ruins became homes. Yet no one forgot. Every scar in the city was left as a reminder. Every crater was left as a warning. Humanity had survived because of courage, unity, and sacrifice. If the aliens returned, they would face the same again. Above, the stars looked different. The wrecks of alien ships drifted slowly, caught in the pull of Arden 3's gravity. At night, the sky glowed with strange new lights, pieces of the battle reflecting the sun. The people called it the Scar of Victory. It was beautiful and haunting, a reminder that their survival had come at the highest price. The galaxy itself began to change. Other civilizations that had watched in silence now took notice. Where once humanity was seen as young and weak, now they were seen as something new, a people who had stood against the darkness and forced it to retreat. A people who had changed the stars with their defiance. The aliens who had come to destroy them would think twice before returning. The legend of Arden 3 would spread beyond human space, carried like fire from one star to the next. And so in the quiet after the storm, the survivors of Arden 3 stood together. They had lost friends, families, entire cities, yet they had gained something greater. They had gained their place among the stars. They had proven that no matter how strong the enemy, no matter how endless the darkness, humanity would fight, humanity would endure. Far away, the black void waited, filled with dangers yet to come. The war was not over. The enemy would return, perhaps stronger than before. But humanity was no longer afraid. They had seen what they were capable of. They had felt the fire of sacrifice and the strength of unity. The next battle would come, and when it did, mankind would be ready. On Arden 3, the wind carried the smoke away, leaving behind a broken but living world. The people lifted their eyes to the stars, no longer with fear but with resolve. The last stand had been made, and it had changed everything. The stars would never look the same again. The galaxy was quiet, but it was not peace. Arden 3 still smoldered, its skies marked with wreckage and ash. The humans had won their last stand, yet every survivor knew the truth. The aliens would return. They had not been destroyed, only wounded, and predators that bled did not forgive. They came back stronger, sharper, and more dangerous than before. Across the colonies, the victory sparked both hope and fear. People celebrated, but whispers filled the air. If the aliens had such power, how many more fleets could they send? Humanity had defeated one arm of the beast, but the body was still out there, vast and silent. Leaders argued once again in the great halls. Some pushed for peace, hoping the aliens would avoid humanity now. Others demanded expansion, to build more weapons, more ships, and prepare for the inevitable. The council split, their voices louder than ever. On Arden 3, the survivors rebuilt, but they carried scars deeper than the land itself. The soldiers who had stood through the battle could not rest. Every sound in the night reminded them of falling ships. Every shadow in the sky made them reach for their rifles. They were heroes now, celebrated across the colonies, but they did not feel like heroes. They felt like survivors, and survivors knew the storm was not over. In the ruins of the city, engineers and scientists studied the wrecks of alien machines. Their designs were strange beyond human imagination, yet also flawed. The humans had found cracks in their armor, weaknesses in their weapons. Every fragment became a lesson, every broken machine a map to new technology. For the first time, humans did more than defend. They began to learn. But deep in the wreckage, beneath the remains of the alien flagship that had fallen into the deserts of Arden 3, something else was found. A core still glowing with energy, still alive. The scientists brought it to the surface carefully, surrounding it with shields and guards. The core pulsed like a beating heart, carrying signals no one could understand. It was not only a machine, it was something more. The discovery spread quickly through the colonies. Some believed it was a weapon, greater than anything humans had ever built. Others feared it was a beacon, a call to the alien empire, a signal that told them exactly where humanity was. The commanders argued for secrecy, but word always finds its way across the stars. Soon every colony spoke of the core, and with it came division. Should it be destroyed or should it be used? The small unit of soldiers who had fought since the first clash found themselves called once again. They had seen the enemy closer than anyone. They had bled for humanity, lost friends, watched the world burn, and still stood. Now the council wanted them to guard the core, to protect it until a choice could be made. None of them trusted the glowing machine, yet none of them trusted the leaders to decide without tearing each other apart. As they stood guard in the desert vault, strange things began to happen. The core whispered in signals that no human ear could hear, yet the soldiers felt it. Nightmares filled their sleep. Visions of stars burning, of fleets moving in the dark, of voices that were not human. Some woke screaming. Others stared into the glow as if pulled by an unseen hand. One soldier swore he heard words inside his head, a message too faint to understand. Far away in the black of space, human scanners picked up movement. Faint signals, broken energy readings like shadows at the edge of vision. The aliens had not returned yet, but something was stirring. Perhaps they had felt the weapon's fire. Perhaps they had heard the Corps' call. The commanders could not agree. All they knew was that time was short. Humanity had changed the stars once with sacrifice, but now the stars were changing again. The soldier who guarded the Corps the closest felt the whispers grow stronger each night. He began to believe the machine was not only a weapon, but a voice, a warning, perhaps even a plea. He did not tell the others at first, afraid they would think he had lost his mind. But in his heart he felt the truth. The war was not over. Arden 3 had been only the first spark in a fire that would sweep across the galaxy. And as the Corps pulsed brighter, sending waves of unseen energy into the void, the stars themselves seemed to shift. Somewhere out there in the endless dark, something was listening. The last stand had saved humanity. But the next war was already coming.